thought I was famous all of a sudden.
Needed a new microphone.
Wasn't aware, yeah. Where's the TV? Holy cow, there's a doctor in the house. Who doesn't hear me?
Emma's supposed to be here.
He's got a few minutes.
1 minute and 40 seconds, 39.
I don't know. He's supposed to be here.
Who's supposed to be here?
I don't know.
Rick, please thank her for the good stuff. That is really awesome. They're delicious.
Oh, no. Right time for the wedding.
Stress.
Excuse me.
Here it comes.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Anthony.
There he is.
He made it with 8, 7, 6, 5 seconds ahead of time. It is going to be 1:30 now. Happy 5th.
How are you?
Reb had a good fifth.
We're about a good.
Oh, are we on mic? I better shut up. Is your blue light on?
Fireworks take their
Oh,
toll
you
of
were
our
lucky.
population.
It was off.
You were lucky, Ed. It was off.
Mine's not working.
Did you push the button?
Yeah.
I was hoping you hadn't so I could razz you.
Yeah, no.
Bethany went home ill, so
Just tell it you love it.
Only important people have a mic that works, right?
That one's not working. All right, well, let me call the meeting to order.
It's on.
So, again, welcome, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. It looks like we've got a quorum, so that'll soothe that. I guess I got to do the obligatory reading. Purpose of the Citizens Advisory Committee to the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority. Primary objective of the CAC is to ensure the capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the voters during November 2nd, 2004 and November 6, 2012 elections are accomplished with PPRTA funds. The committee reports directly to the Board of Directors. Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the, Rick?
So moved.
you may or may not have the revised agenda, which Bethany was going to have to hand out. We need an 8A, B, and a C.
Oh, don't have one.
Don't have a C. No, don't have a C.
Sorry.
All right, well, is that the, He'll be right back. It's okay, so what he's adding, and we'll discuss it more, what he's adding is, at my request, 8C, which would be an agenda item to discuss the discussion going among the elected representatives in the area about the I-25 widening and the use of RTA funds. I've got some serious concerns about that. Not about the project, but we'll talk about that. So I wanted it to be an agenda item so that we would have an opportunity to report out to the board on it. So, so let's just skip over the agenda for a moment and go with approval of the minutes from the June 27 meeting.
I have an agenda, a correction to the minutes on the attendance, and this is so it's just minuscule, but my name is Cheryl Everett with an I
With an I.
on the back of the minutes.
I-T-E-R-E-R-I-T-T?
Yep,
Okay.
that's it, thank you.
Motion to approve is amended.
Second.
We have a motion for approval of the minutes as amended and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Put those over here.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Staff field review report.
Mr. Chair, once you have this, I'll move to approve the amended agenda.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to have a chance to look at it.
Staff field reports? Is that right? Is this your agenda item,
It
Jim?
would be the November 7th ballot election.
Mine says staff field review report.
Yeah, that would be the old B, so he inserted a
I
B.
gotcha.
So
Now I
it's-
understand how it's been
The addition of
revised.
8B, the November ballot
Yep.
issue. So do I have a request to approve the amended agenda as presented?
So moved.
Tony, Joe? Tony and Tom? Okay, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, great, thank you. All right, financial reports, Ms. Bev. No.
Okay, good afternoon. The April sales and use tax figure is $7,787,000, which was almost $850,000 above the monthly budget, or 12%. And this budget is still the first amendment because the board will be approving the second amendment this next week. So this monthly budget of 94, or yearly budget of 94 million will be 100 million. So, but we're still doing well. It's just that it won't look like we're doing quite that well once the amended second amendment's in this financial report. So on the second page, compared to last year, we're ahead $2,629,000 for the first 4 months, or 9.6%. After that, page 3 through 5 is the revenue and expense summary, and like this is still the First Amendment. And then the rest of the pages are the capital costs to date, from inception to date, compared to the project budgets. Does anybody have any questions?
All good. Rick, you have something? Oh, okay. All good news in terms of revenue continuing to stay
Yes.
above prediction?
Yes.
And they are not excess revenue.
Yeah.
Excess fund. Anyway, sorry.
He's getting ahead of himself.
Any questions for Bev on our financial report? All right, thanks, Bev.
Thanks.
All right. Item number 6, 2017 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts, City of Colorado Springs line item transfer. Mike?
Good afternoon, Mike Chavez, City Engineering. First item we have is a line item transfer from RTA 1 funds. Just a brief background, we've been putting unobligated money into a reserve account that was going to be used as needed, and we have kind of left that alone for a while because we've been okay. The Mark Sheffield South project was one that might have needed it, and I think talking to Jennifer, they're okay, or if they do need some, it's going to be very little. Woodman widening is the other project that was possible, but I think we're looking good. I think if we do need more money, we've got RTA 1 city projects that have some money left over that will roll over. So the kind of the candidate was North Mark Sheffield, and we didn't know what or where we'd be spending some money. But one of the things we've been working on, Kathleen's been working with Jennifer, and one of the projects we'd like to start up is a bridge that on the Mark Sheffield alignment over Sand Creek. And Rick handed out some additional papers, and there's on the very end, that little extra package, there's an exhibit that shows where we're looking at starting the design on a bridge on the Mark Sheffield extension, and the thinking there is that the alignment will go up north from Woodman and curve into Cowpoke and go on to Black Forest. There's a lot of potential development around there, and the thinking is the developers will build the roads, but the bridge is a little bit tougher question as to who's going to build it. So we think it would help spur the development of the roadway if we use the RTA to build that bridge. And it's basically a multi-celled culvert. So what we're looking at this point is just transferring in $200,000 into this project to start the design, and then once we get a better cost estimate, we'll come back and request additional money. I think initially a previous concept design might have been around the $1 million mark. We've got a little bit more work to do, but as soon as we get an idea of what that might be, we'll come back. But the $200,000 is to get a task order to CPNY. They've given us a scope on our on-call contracts, and we've talked with Jennifer and the county, and they're okay with this transfer. They don't see it as an issue. So we're requesting this transfer so that then we can award the task order.
Any questions for Mike? Rev?
We got a discussion back in 2014 about completing what it would take to complete.
Brett, please use the microphone.
We had a discussion starting in 2014.
Is it on? Is it on?
It's on.
Okay.
We had a discussion in 2014
Wait a minute, it was better. No.
about the completion of the projects, and we started pooling money and setting it aside. At that time, they pointed out some issues on the north end of Mark Sheffield, but south of Woodman. They include one, and I later learned there were two, low water areas, and then Kathleen brought up an issue about an area just to the south of Woodman on Mark Sheffield. I personally don't agree, and this is kind of, to me, a judgment, not an engineering. I don't agree with putting money on a road that does not even exist yet on a project when you have issues on the south side of Woodman where the road does exist and you have a considerable amount of traffic and some danger to the public going through those low water crossings. So that's personal opinion. It is not an engineering opinion.
And we all were aware of that, and one of the things we are working on is the county's actually got a project going out. I think the bid, they just finished design to fix that one of the low water crossings. They're going to do that here soon. The second low water crossing I'm not too familiar with. We're also looking at coming next month with maybe a kind of a roadmap of what to do with the remaining reserve fund, and part of that is what do we do south of Woodman. Unfortunately, I think those fixes are, in the $40 million range. I think we're looking at using some of this money to take care of some of the things that you just had concern about. But we don't have an exact plan just yet, but we would like to come back next month with at least kind of a general idea of what we might be able to do with that $4 or $5 million.
I sort of follow on with what Reb said, is that, we were looking at, any excess funds going to Mark Sheffel south of Woodman. And this particular project is, well, you look at the diagram right there, this looks like a bridge to nowhere, because there's, no development north of there. I know there is some in the long-term phase of, the development in this area. But I guess my question is I think we should put this particular item off until you present to us next month a full phased plan as far as Mark Sheffel goes, all the way from North Carefree, up and including this area right here. Because I think we're getting ahead of ourselves if we're, looking at putting a bridge there. It could be a year, could be 2 years, before development really gets going up there to where that bridge is used, where that money could be used on the south side of Woodman Road to improve, sections of Mark Sheffel. I know that the county, Jennifer's here, and I've talked to her before about it, is that they are working on that low water crossing right now, which will take care of, that major issue there. But there's still several miles of major issues along Mark Sheffel there that really needs to be addressed. So my preference is that we put this off till next month until you have a complete plan before us, so that we can see the whole development all the way from North Carefree all the way up and including or possibly past this particular bridge.
And I've got a question just more on the topography of the area.
It's rough.
It seems like that just about where that bridge is in crossing Sand Creek, it's fairly flat right there through that area, if I remember right. So Sand Creek is really fairly wide if you want to look at the creek bed per se. In reading your description, it a large culvert, but it would have, my non-engineering logic says that because of the width of that flow through there, or potential flow through there, that it would be a fair amount of creek buildup and channeling in order to run it in through that culvert. So am I correct? Am I got the right place? It's been a while since I've been up there.
Yes, and we've actually had the preliminary hydraulics done previously, and they did a concept culvert crossing and set a width, and so what we were waiting on, we actually wanted to come before, but we were waiting for the final hydraulics to be done by the engineer, the developer of this area, and he's got that to us. So it's a multi-cell culvert that we're looking at.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay. Any other questions, Scott?
So if the city and RTA didn't pay to build this bridge, would it be the developer's responsibility?
I'm not sure about that. I have to ask Kathy. I can get that answer back next month. But I think it was a little bit, it's a little more convoluted as to who would build the bridge. And again, the thinking there is if we can get that connection in, then there's interest from the developer to extend Mark Sheffel from Cowpoke, which would be that north area that was just mentioned. And there is some of the roadway that's built south of Sand Creek. So we were just thinking that at least for the cost of the bridge would be, a good investment to, try to get that connection built. Because the North Mark Sheffel project really was from not only from North Carefree up to Woodman, it's also extending it to Black Forest. And like I said, the dollar amount of that whole project and some of the widening south of Woodman is a lot more than the $5 million. So we're not sure what we can do with the $5 million
Sure.
piecemeal in it.
Brian, do you have a question?
Yeah, Scott actually touched on it for me. There's a lot of significant development, housing development being done to the north of Woodman between Mustang and Black Forest there. And if we can get the determination on whether or not there's developer participation, the force or the burden of the development that's taking place should be partially borne by the developer who's developing those communities. So I would definitely like to see that as much as possible.
Yeah. And Kathleen mentioned to me that, that if we did the bridge, then that just adds incentive for the developers to make those connections, which they are
So
on the
you're
hook.
talking like roadway connections, so
Yes.
it's kind of a chess match, you put the.
Chicken or the egg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you put the bridge in and then they come up with the additional funds for like roadway connections?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we're thinking of moving this ahead at this point.
Ed?
Yeah, I just want to be clear, Mike, you're only asking for funding today to plan this?
For the design, yes, at this
for the
point.
design, which to me makes sense in the overall process.
And I think what that'll help us is have a better idea of where do we put the rest of this money, if this bridge is relatively inexpensive, maybe it's worth, but if it's more than we thought, and, maybe the money needs to go to the south part. So we're just trying to get a better idea of what it's going to cost.
Cheryl, David was first.
The developer, do they know are they committed to what they're developing there? Is it houses, is it apartments?
I think it's mostly housing.
There is some apartments being built at Black Forest there, just to would be the east of Black Forest. Most of it's single-family residential. There's also some minor commercial stuff going on.
I guess the reason for the question is because you've done the hydraulics and the water flow and all that, and we should know what we're going to build there.
Yeah.
If we're trying to
Oh.
design a culvert bridge, we know, and we want to know how much water is going to flow through there, we obviously should know what they're going to build there or develop. And is it going to be a shopping center with a pavilion?
I would, well, again, and I don't know the exact details, I can come back, but again, the engineer for the developers did the hydraulics, so in his assumptions and calculations, he's probably accounted for whatever the future land use is.
We just don't know what that is, apparently. Cheryl?
Just a quick question. This extension to Cowpoke, is this facilitate north-south movement when you go over to Cowpoke? Does Cowpoke go into a parkway or an expressway, or where would this lead?
Well, and then I might have Jennifer, so basically, Mark Sheffel extends, kind of follows the little dog leg that's kind of shown in here, and then it would continue east.
East?
West.
I'm sorry, west.
Here's west to Cowpoke, you said. Then where does Cowpoke go?
Cowpoke doesn't.
Well, I can tell you, it'd probably be better if we had an alignment here to show you, but, the county did do, the county and the city, because they participated as well. We did a corridor analysis before we started the entire Mark Sheffel Road project. And that corridor essentially shows Mark Sheffel as intersecting Black Forest, and then it connects into Research Parkway.
Research, okay.
So ultimately, that makes that connection. Now, some of that connection happens back into the county, and whether or not that stays in the county, but the county does have a development in process called Sterling Ranch that has some of that connection to Mark Sheffel as it hits Volmer.
Okay.
But it would hit Cowpoke, Volmer, and then ultimately connects into Black Forest at Research Parkway. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it does. Cowpoke right now is this little tiny street, and if you, developed.
On a dirt road on one side.
Yeah. Where is this leading, I guess is the question. Thank you. Yes.
I just think it would be good to have a list of planned projects well ahead of time, so that we aren't asking you questions about why are you doing that for, or so forth, and so that we can get a sense for how it affects neighborhoods and other
I
things.
know the creek very well.
Okay, that's a fair request.
And I didn't know where- I thought Cowpoke-
So I think Ed, go ahead.
I want to ask a question. What effect if we postpone this 1 month?
It wouldn't be in the world, I think, we're just trying to, stay on top of things, but,
basically,
We
the
can-
concern seems to be,
Yeah.
what's the overall picture? And a lot of people don't
Be any
understand
surprises.
Mark Sheffel north of Woodman and how it's, I mean, no real accurate concept of where it's going to get to Black Forest because of the
Well,
development.
we can bring back what we have. I don't know how concrete everything is. I think it's very conceptual, but
Well, Ed brought up that this is just for the design, which could contribute to provide and inform the decision-making process on what's going forward. So the request is for design money, so,
I'll make a motion.
and it's got to be designed either way, so that's the city's request. Any other comments? I think they're all been very good comments, Dr.
If they
Noel.
show us the design, does that mean they can't change it before they do it?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Would they then come back if they were going to change it and inform us?
Well, I think before they let a contract after design, they would anyway.
Yeah,
So-
it just doesn't do us any good to hear about it and then it's something different unless.
well, I mean, basically, you'd see the design when, well, I mean, when we come, if we went out to bid and came back for approval.
Yeah. So we have a request from the city for design funds for this section. And I think in addition to that, we've also make sure that they include any plans into whatever they come back in to next week. So is someone willing to make a motion, Ed?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
I'll second.
What was your motion, Ed? I'm sorry.
The motion was for the design and whatever we need to do to proceed forward with this, at this point.
And I second it.
And Cheryl second. Any
No,
further
it's-
discussion?
that's later.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, you better.
Oppose, keep your hands up for just a second, please. Oppose?
Oh, sorry.
Oppose?
What's the motion again?
The motion is to approve 200,000 line item transfer from RTA 1 Reserve Pool to the design of the Mark Shuffle Road widening up north of Woodman Road.
You understand.
Any particular length of time that we're deferring it?
Not deferring it.
No.
Right now, it's approved today.
It's approval for the
today.
design
It's
money.
either yes, you do, or no,
No,
you
you
don't.
don't.
Okay.
Okay, so those that are opposed, please raise your hand again. 3, 4, 5, 6.
Were there any abstentions?
Okay.
So it's 8 in favor and 6 opposed? Is that?
You've got the math.
All those in favor?
Dr. Knowles?
I'm sorry.
Which
I fell asleep here, excuse me. Had a hard
That's the
night.
8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 to 6 in favor.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
All right, so, yeah, I was, yeah. Next item, Colorado Springs contract requests.
That's this.
Okay, the city. So we have, again, we got a pretty good list. The first,
Are we looking at, was this list modified
okay, so,
from the original?
yeah, so look at the handout that we got today. That was a little bit updated of contract list.
Okay. Yes.
And there was, basically, there was one contract that we didn't have numbers on, and I filled that in. So the first three are concrete contracts for the street operations on-call program. And what we're looking at doing is we're awarding three contracts for $100,000, not to exceed $100,000 for their on-call program. And basically, what they're doing there is, again, the contractor is very busy. The one contractor who has a contract isn't able to respond quickly. So we're just having some additional contracts available, so if requests come in or there's a need, they have a choice of getting somebody out there. So again, it's kind of like the contracts last month. We're not physically awarding $300,000. They would just have, it's just kind of, I forget the term they use, but basically we have the availability and option to use any one of these contractors as needed.
Okay.
The next,
Question, I mean, what does replace the two bridges for Enchanted Bridge? I'd like to see an Enchanted Bridge. Anyway, to be decided.
oh,
We hadn't gotten to that one.
that one, but if you
Hold on.
look at, look,
I
look,
was anxious to ask that question.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait.
look at your handout that we had today. That one, that list is more updated. Okay, so then so then the next item, item number 4, we're doing a change order to Nolte's contract. We're asking them to provide a bridge inspector to help us out through the end of the year. We've got just a lot of bridge work going on. We have one inspector who's been working on it, and he's actually kind of taken over some of the construction management duties from the engineer we lost at the city, and so he would help supplement the field work. Next item, Transit has a grant.
Can I,
Oh,
that's $129,651 for 6 months? What is, that means he makes a lot of money a year.
well, it's a consultant, it's their rate, which we do pay.
Well, I mean, I thought you said he's going to be an employee.
No, he would supplement Nolte's program management contract.
I misread it, then I thought he was going to be a hire on.
No, it's consultant. So, yeah, we're amending Nolte's contract.
I need to review my consulting rate.
Yeah, mine too.
The next item is there's a grant that the Transit Division has to help ADA compliance, making the bus routes accessible, putting in missing pieces of sidewalk or ped ramps. And they have a grant, and we're using the RTA as the match. So we're asking for approval for $47,000 of RTA money.
Buys us a lot.
The next,
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
Mike, is that a federal grant or?
yes, it's a FTA, Federal Transit Agency grant.
Since they mandated it, it's only right that they should pitch in.
Right. It's not an unfunded mandate.
I want to be retrained.
Next item is design contract to hire construction management and testing services for the upcoming Pikes Peak reconstruction for AECom. We're bidding that project now as we speak, so we'd like to have this in place when we open bids and get somebody going. I will also be speaking to that project later on as per policy 26, where we come in, you kind of talk about and explain cost increases on projects.
Okay.
Next item is we've got 2 failing culverts on Enchanted and Fascination, so we bid those out. There is, I believe, in the original memo, a little vicinity map to show where these 2 culverts are. And they have failed. One of the streets actually has a steel plate over it so that people can still use it.
So I have a question. About a year ago, maybe, somewhere about that time frame, we had a big discussion about these 2 projects. And what did we approve then? Jim, do you remember?
Remember?
It was the definition of a bridge.
Okay.
Was that
Yeah.
the discussion about
That-
the 42-inch culvert doofitchy thing?
Mhm.
That was it.
Okay. Because they were on the A list and we were in the whole bridge discussion?
Well, that might have been tied in. First of all, we had come for the Mark Dabbling bridges, and so we moved one. Since it was an emergency bridge, it was a B list, and there was a discussion of, can we do that?
Yeah, because there was a specific discussion about these 2 and whether one of them was an emergency bridge fund, and then we got into that discussion about the bridge, and they were related, and you didn't want to mobilize twice with 2 bridges in the proximity. Am I getting the?
Yes.
Yeah, one was A-list and one wasn't, so they used emergency bridge funds for the one that wasn't
Okay,
A-list.
all right. I remember some portions of that discussion, but couldn't pull it all together.
Diameter of the culverts?
48-inch?
4 feet. They're actually old manhole structures that they laid on the side rather than actual structural pipe, which is part of the problem.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions?
That answered my question on that one.
And then the last one is a construction contract for the operation maintenance. There's some rotted out corrugated metal pipe under Tejon that they need to line and get that rehab before they go and do some surface work.
Sure. I hate to go back, but can I go back to the Nolte, 129,000? You said that we need to supplement that because the city lost.
Well, in part. So we have a very robust program this year. We got additional maintenance money, quite a bit to stay, in part to stay ahead of 2C, but just we have a lot of bridge maintenance. So we've got almost 4.7 million this year of work that we've got out in the streets. Typically, we have about 1.8 every year. So we just got a lot of stuff that we need additional help, field help, to get this stuff worked. They're working on Colorado Bridge right now, redoing the rail. We're going to be starting the Woodman Bridge over Monument Creek. So there's just additional work that we needed more help.
Okay, and the reason I was asking about the loss of the person is the city looking at, rehiring?
We are in the process of rehiring, but we may not necessarily hire somebody with the same skill set.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Is he an inspector or an engineer?
An inspector,
So his qualifications are different.
yes.
I like it.
Well, many home inspectors that we like to do.
Yeah. Well, he's not making that direct.
No, I know, they got nailed.
Yeah, they got over.
All right, and the last one?
Let's go to 7.
I thought Jim had a question on Enchanted Bridges.
Oh, yeah, you had a question about the bridges.
It was about the PD determined.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
the
Thank
new,
you.
Before you got
the
to
new
something.
handout.
Problem was to be decided. What does that mean?
Well, we weren't opening bids before the deadline to get your agendas out. So I came today with the actual dollar amount.
Where is it, though?
It's on the back page of the handout.
Down
that came
about.
today.
I got it, but it doesn't say.
I thought maybe
This-
we could decide.
It's the second.
Yeah, but the picture of the bridge is in that. Oh, okay.
I'm just, what does he have the information for?
Some people don't
Who's the
read
contractor?
the package.
Basically, it's still.
Look at the new table on,
Look at your handout, Reb.
It's on this. It's not.
Yeah, and it's in the memo that's attached. I updated the memo. And then, so the low bid was 526. We had two bidders. The other bidder was 538.
And these are for culverts or for bridges? No.
Synonymous. It's a bridge. We have a policy.
I just had to get it.
And I think I talked about the pipelining. Somebody said that we had, was there a question on that one?
The Tejon.
Yes.
No, I just remembered that Jim had
Okay.
a question.
I thought we gave out like 3 or 4, i.e. for you, me, and like 3 or 4 different people that could do linings already. Like,
No, this one is just they got a price.
Straight out
quote.
contract, not a.
Yeah.
not an
On the-
on-call or.
Yeah.
No, this is for a specific project. Item number 8.
Can I have 30 seconds?
Sure.
Just to clarify, from a year ago on the Fascination and Enchanted, okay, Fascination Bridge is a listed B project. So it was moved to the Emergency Bridge Fund. Enchanted is a listed A project. And they're packaged together because they're in close proximity, they're a block apart, and economy of scale and save money.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
make a
Tom.
motion.
You may make a motion.
I'd like to move that we approve the Colorado Springs contract list as presented today.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Item number 7, member governments and other projects, city transit. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Brian Vituli, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metro Transit, with your monthly transit report. For our fixed route services, we saw an increase of a little over 8% from this May to May of 2016. And I also like to point out the last row in the table, boardings per revenue service hour. We've shown some increased efficiencies. That number is on the plus side. So for May of 2017, we actually saw a higher boardings per revenue service hour than we've been seeing for the past months from last year. So I think, we've added an awful lot of revenue service hours over the last couple of years, and ridership hasn't quite gotten up to that level, but we've crossed that level, at least for May of 2017, where we're a little bit more efficient, and ridership, looking at the chart at the bottom of that page, you'll see that ridership for 2017 is way up 15 and 16, so we're trending very well. Yes.
I just wanted to say, you guys deserve a lot of credit for this, because with gas prices being the lowest we've seen in a long time,
Right.
the fact that you're seeing increased ridership and a better revenue per hour, that means that the efficiencies that you guys have been putting into place over the last couple of years, the way you're designing them, are serving the community better. So please pass along, at least
I sure will. Yeah.
the congratulations on that.
Okay.
It's not
Yeah.
easy.
All right. All right. Thank you. And for our ADA Power Transit services, we saw about a 4% increase over that same time period. And for our van pool operations, we saw about a 15% decrease from May of 2016 to May of this year.
Brian,
Yes.
have you seen any correlation between the dip in van pool and increase in people using Mustang?
No, we haven't really gotten to that point yet. But, we are leaner. We do provide less van pools, so that, there's a combination of factors that fit into that. But I'm not quite sure how the success of Mustang has fit into that equation. But, yeah, Mustang has, at least the southern route, the northern route and the route out I-70 has been very successful right from the get-go. And the southern route here that serves Colorado Springs, it's taken a little bit of time to get up to speed, but that's trending in a very positive way also.
I think that gap between Frex and Mustang kind of killed a lot of initiative.
Yeah.
And then when they came back with that bus, their schedule doesn't support the people that work normal hours. So I'm hoping that CDOT's looking at feedback on that, because I think if several factors, if they would change it so that it accommodates the people that work a normal 8 to 5 a little better. And the other drawback is that bus is stuck in the same traffic as everybody else. The only difference is you can do some work on your
Right.
laptop while you're sitting there. But I'd really like to see them change those hours a little bit and run them a little later and start them a little earlier.
Right. Well, the Deputy Director of CDOT's Transit and Rail Division will be coming to the PPACG Board this month, next Wednesday, to present some updates on the rail planning that's been going on, but also Mustang, and they are planning to add some service to Mustang, including our southern route. So that will be, if you get a chance to see that, there will be some good information shared with that, because there's a lot of stuff going on at the state level with rail planning and looking at high-speed rail or commuter rail options from here to Denver. So it will be good to hear an update on that, because things tend to be somewhat highway heavy around here, so it'll be good to get a little bit of balance with what's going on at the state level.
Yeah, hopefully they're not still looking at the 1,000-mile-an-hour train. Let's just get
Right.
something. That moves people.
Yeah.
Just get something that moves people.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks, Brian.
Sure. And a brief update on the downtown transit station relocation study. There's a link there that you can still look at the draft relocation study report that was, up until last fall, it kind of reached the point where they identified the 3 sites to move forward on. The mayor then appointed a steering committee to look at prioritizing those 3 sites. And sometime later this month, mid-July, late July, the steering committee will be presenting their recommendation to the mayor. We're trying to get everybody's schedules in line, so very soon that should happen. And also, I just wanted to mention the 2017 allocation for the specialized transportation providers. There was a brief update to that. Currently, the amount was $397,465, but there's been about $38,000 in 2016 operating carryover that was added to that budget. So the total now is $435,528, and that's split among the 4 specialized transportation providers: Fountain Valley Senior Center, Silver Key, Amblicab, and Community Intersections. So again, it was increased from $397,000 to $435,000. So are there any questions? Rick?
Please tell me the full number again.
Sure.
The new current, 435 what?
435, 528, and 37 cents. Sure.
I'd just like to, for you guys' benefit, on the steering committee for the transit center relocation, out of the 20-some members, or roughly thereabout, that were on that committee, funny thing happened, and everybody agreed on the prioritization of the 3 finalists. They did a little chart about the pros and cons of which one and where people put it, and everybody ranked those 3. Nobody was hard over on any other changes, so the committee is really speaking with the united voice, and I think they've got 3 really good proposals. The pros and cons of each have been weighed and laid out in the report, and I think the leading candidate going into the mayor is really a strong improvement in transit for the city. So it's going to be real interesting, and hope that the mayor and the community buys it, because it's I think it's a pretty good plan. So.
Can we have a White House leak program here and find out which one favored?
It's on the chart. The candidate, the first candidate is at Colorado Wasatch and
Colorado, Sawatch, Sierra Madre,
Cacharis.
Yeah.
It's kind of right across from the hairdressing place. It's down there on the lower level, 1 block off the railroad, right there. It's just the first block south of Colorado.
Where they do Blues Under the Bridge?
Yeah, that general area.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's just north of the site. Yep, this is
Yep.
on the south side of Colorado Avenue.
And
Yep.
then the second one is on Nevada, about a block south of the existing one on the east side of Nevada, where there was an old, everybody refers to an old building, but it's not that same building now.
Well, it was the Colorado Springs Health Partners building,
Yeah.
and it's where the Independent is, that
And
block
then
there.
the other one is over El Paso South, where the street runs at a diagonal, and there are 2 sections of that street.
Pueblo
And they,
Avenue.
Pueblo,
yeah.
Pueblo, sorry. And there, so that's kind of the priority of the 3. But
I always thought that would have been an interesting one.
yeah, there's other issues in that area,
Don't get me wrong, I understand.
but the advantage of that was the city owned the property, so that was a big plus there. But anyway, but it was a good process. It's been a good result. I've been involved in it now since both the part that went from 28 sites down over a year now down to this final 3. So it's been an interesting process, and I think we've got 3 really good proposals. So, thanks, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 7B, capital project cost revision for Pikes Peak Avenue reconstruction per board policy 26. Whew.
Good afternoon, Mike Chavis, City Engineering again. So we discussed policy 26 a while back, and we came up with when we had projects that were significantly more than the ballot language number, we would come and explain to you. I don't have a slideshow because I'm not sure how you would put this into a slideshow. But basically, let me just run through the memo. So the Pikes Peak reconstruction was on the ballot for $8.6 million. And that was pretty much just construction costs to redo the pavement section and the curb and gutter. So over the last several years, we calculated that just on construction cost increases, we were expecting about 8% annually. So that would have put our expected cost to be about $12 million. So that kind of covers the first 2 paragraphs. Or 3. Then the next paragraph, including the table, takes into account that this project had to be engineered, had to be looked at for drainage because the drainage system that is there is old. Probably the little bit that's there is undersized, 100 years old. Well, not necessarily. That's not bad as long as you're holding up. But our pipes aren't holding up. There's some CMPs and undersized. So there's a lot of flooding. A lot of flooding of Pikes Peak when we get the heavy storms. And then there is also, so in addition to just the roadway drainage, there's also some water quality issues that we have to incorporate because of it's just our drainage criteria also. And then there is some additional CSU work that's in the project cost, but they will reimburse and cover that. And then we got design and CM services. So what we came up with is overall total project cost of about 19.2, which we'll verify when we open bids in a few weeks. So if you go back to the back side of the page, so we just tried to explain. So basically, what we're looking at is you take out CSU's cost. The RTA project is about $16 million. And so we had expected just from construction cost increase about $12 million. So we got about $4 million additional cost that we have. And then again, of that $4.3 million, 3.2 is drainage costs that were not anticipated or in the original budget. So that left us about $1 million above the index base construction cost, and that's about 8.5%. So overall, I guess, what we're attempting is just show where the costs are. I think we've talked about inflation before. We had talked about indexing the projects in general just to get them closer, but we decided not to do that, I think, or maybe do that more on a case-by-case basis. So basically, the 2 drivers there is the cost of construction over the years has increased, and then the scope of the project, as originally put in the ballot, didn't really account for what the project was going to entail as far as design and additional drainage. Now, this actually mirrors the Centennial extension pretty well. The Centennial project pretty much was road rehab and curb and gutter. We did do about $1 million with the drains to line the culvert, but that project went from about $8 million to about $12 million, and like I said, it was pretty much a true reconstruction. We're seeing similar numbers here. We go from 8 to 12 in the construction cost, plus the additional drainage and the CM and engineering drives it up to 19 or 16 million, then CSU's work puts us at 19 million.
Okay, Brian?
Just to refresh my memory, we're looking at about 3/4 of a mile. Is that about right?
No, it goes from Shook's Run to Printers Parkway, and offhand, I'm not sure what the length is.
Actually, doesn't it go from,
Okay. 'Cause
International to Shook's Run.
yeah, but it goes, well, it goes past Shook's Run.
No,
It goes up to where Pikes Peak turns off and.
No, that's another project. This reconstruction.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I was asking, because the map I'm looking at shows Printers, just to the east of Printers Parkway to right around Shook's Run.
Mhm.
Shook's Run Park.
Yeah, that's,
Basically Shook's Run to Printers Park.
yes, and unfortunately, I don't have that.
I've got a question as far as the CSU piece.
Mhm.
If we give them $500,000 more, can they align the damn manhole covers other than right where your left tire goes in the middle of the road?
Absolutely.
I mean, it seems like to me, this is all planned and engineered. You've got stuff that's under the ground. When you build a road, put the daggum things over the
Well-
center line, not
No.
where your left tire hits the line.
Now, are those, not sure what manholes, because they're storm manholes and they're sanitary.
Or at least
No.
get them as city streets guys to level them up when they restart them. Is he gone already?
Yeah, no, that is something we do look at. If we are putting in new manholes for either sanitary or storm system, we do look at putting, out of the wheel path.
Center of the lane or something.
Yeah.
They're really doing that out west. I'm seeing this, because you see the double lines all of a sudden change.
Oh, yeah.
No, we do try to get those out of the way if possible. So this is kind of the first stab we had at coming with, policy 26. So in addition to, if you have any questions on this project, if you have any comments on maybe some
Tony,
additional
go
stuff.
ahead, and then I'd like to explain something. Go ahead.
I did have one question that didn't have to do with the numbers, but more of the timing. When are we looking at this actually starting to take place?
I believe we're bidding that right now, so we're looking at coming in, I believe in August to approve the construction contract.
Okay, so plan on not driving down there starting in August, September.
No, well, they'll keep traffic, it'll be open,
Yeah.
one lane each way.
So don't drive there. Got it.
Are there any, Mr. Null?
Can't resist.
Resist.
If you don't like the manhole covers, these small cars, it'll flip them right over.
Were there members that remember the discussion or the thing about policy 26 new to anybody that I need to elaborate? Cheryl, basically, in a very
read it in the book that.
very thumbnail research, or what happened was back when the projects were put together for the ballot, a lot of the cost estimates are back of the envelope kind of stuff. And, of course, as you know, none of the dollar values went on the ballot. Well, that kind of became the baseline. And then as they began getting further and the projects getting closer to execution, those costs were being refined. And in some cases, doubled or 200% increase in what was originally done. And the question was, why? And so this was an attempt at an explanation of why, and I think that they did a good job of explaining where they were and why they got to where they are right now. And it might change again when they open bid, so.
Well, do they have a process at which they can notify the public or some people ahead of time that there may be problems with such and such? Or do we find these things happen and then, now the costs increase? It sounds like there's no control over.
Well, we're depending on them to be in control of the control of the notification part anyway. But, yes, Brian.
Well, let Rev go first.
Hey, question. When we put the list together, whether it's county or. When we put this list together before the 2012, it was 2012 election year. But regardless, we had bare numbers. I say bare numbers. And this is indicating you had a construction cost of 8.6, and I'm going to use round numbers, 8.7 million.
Amazing.
And none of the other costs were included? I mean, you knew that you were going to have CSU. You knew that you would have design and construction maintenance service. My point is, based on what I understood about the initiative on the ballot and how the thing was assembled, it was based on 75% of the budgeted amount actually being achieved, and then the projects were picked accordingly. These would be a list, and they were picked by the member governments or whatever. I guess what I'm saying, it appears to me that this thing is almost 100% over the original estimate of 8.7 and, what is it, 16-something now? 16.5, 16.6? Am I misunderstanding this in some way?
That's inflation, though.
What?
Half of that is inflation. I mean, you just showed the CDOT calculation on just what construction costs have gone up in that time.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying what I'm seeing for the numbers is they're saying it's like 41%, and I'm saying it's 100%, 42%.
But yes, and so this so there was several of the reconstruction projects that we hadn't got numbers from the street division, and
He's not here to protect himself.
No, it's not, and it's not Corey. But I'm not trying to blame anyone. But the numbers we got for some of these Centennial and Pikes Peak and Academy were given to us, and I wasn't really sure until more recently. They were just basically, what's it going to cost to redo the road? When we actually started looking at getting these projects online, we thought, well, we saw we can just
Change the scope.
Change the pavement, we changed it out, and we got to look at the drains and all that. So I think what I see is that I've been through 2 of these RT rounds. I think the next round, I think we're going to have to do a better job and make sure that we have a better idea of what the project really is going to entail. And we're not going to be able to, really come up with a detailed cost estimate, but I think we need to take into account time delay for inflation and also look at, hey, is this just construction, and then do we need to factor in the design and all that? So I think, kind of a lesson learned, we need to vet these a little bit more than we have.
The good news is that everybody's talking, and we're not putting in a street and fixing it and then tearing it up because CSU's got something to do. So the good news is they were going to spend that money anyway, but now they're doing it in conjunction with the project versus after. So that's a good thing. You have to.
I have a question regarding the cost index increase and using trend line for the entire time period from November to August of this year, November 12 to now. Shouldn't you be using actual cost index growth for those monthly periods or quarterly periods where you have it, as opposed to using trend line data?
One of my engineers put this together. Now, earlier, when I was looking at this last year or early this year, we used the CDOT's cost estimate, cost increase from 12 to 16, and we came up with about a 30% increase. So we're here at 41. So I'm not an economist, and I think we're just taking the information we have, and this is what my engineer came up with, and I have confidence in his number is good, and also kind of somewhat matches the earlier number we were looking at using too. So, I'll chat with him, but I think we're in the ballpark for the inflation costs.
Well, the reason I'm asking is if using trend line data and regression in order to put it together tends to average out the costs. And that can raise the actual inflation rate over the actual inflation costs on a monthly or quarterly basis over the same time period. It may raise it, it may be about right, it may be lower when you use trend line data. And since we have actual inflation or cost index for certainly November 2012 to sometime within the last 3 to 6 months of today, that would be more appropriate to use the actual cost index growth as opposed to trend line data for where you have it, and then use trend line to fill in the area where actual data is not available.
Okay. And that's a good point, like I said, any input on what we did on this one, so that the next ones we do. So that's, I'll have to talk to somebody about that.
Did you do any kind of internal value engineering to see if there was anything in the project that could be removed to get closer to the cost estimate without eliminating the whole project altogether?
We did do some things, basically, one area I know we did is the Union Pikes Peak intersection was slated to be concrete, and we went back to just asphalt because that was significant savings, about $300,000 there. But overall, no, there wasn't too much we could cut, and unfortunately, the drainage and the water quality were kind of things that were added as we went on in design.
Two things. The first thing is, you mentioned that for cost savings, you went from the concrete to the asphalt. One of the things I've noticed is that the asphalt obviously doesn't go up as well. Do you see us kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul with that particular intersection? Because it's kind of a high traffic intersection. Do you think it would be beneficial to maybe suck it up and spend the additional dollars for concrete from a long-term perspective?
I think we made the decision to go to asphalt because, we have such costs. I don't know if it was worth it at this point. I mean, we have some intersections done in concrete that have held up very well, and we are looking at trying to incorporate those. But fortunately, the concrete cost is just so much more that it's at this point not worth doing it.
Okay. The other question is, and this is related to this project, but a little bit more generally. I've noted that a lot of the projects that are taking place in the downtown core and adjacent seem, from their design, headed towards limiting downtown traffic, which is understandable because there's a push to make it more pedestrian, bicyclist, walkable friendly. I just want to make sure that there's a plan for people who need to get from the east side of town to the west side of town to be able to do it, because that's one of our big issues as a city, is getting east to west and west to east.
Yes, and again, traffic will be maintained now, though it will be reduced. The other thing we're looking at very carefully is, especially going into next year, because this is probably a 2-year construction, is make sure that we kind of get out of the way when we have big things like the Balloon Fest and any other big activities at the park. So those are being looked at.
I'm kind of with Brian on this intersection. Can you go back and reevaluate that? 300,000 doesn't seem like a substantial amount. What?
Yeah.
Oh, I was talking to him one night. Okay.
We want to identify who it was.
I'm with Brian on this. I don't see 300,000 being very much of a savings on that intersection as busy as it is. I'd sure like for you to go back to the board and see if you can't save 300,000 somewhere else and go to the concrete.
Okay, and we can do that now. I think that was just our material costs. One of the problems with concrete intersections is the phasing gets very complicated, and so it might be material cost 300, but when you actually get a bid from a contractor, it might be substantially more. As in Union and Woodman a few weeks ago, we had to shut down Union, and the contractor had basically 48 hours or something to try to do patches. He did a spot and moved traffic over and then did another spot. And so that's why the concrete sometimes gets pricey, because of the phasing it. When you just do an asphalt, you just shift traffic over, you pave, and you open up as soon as it cools. Concrete, you got to have it set. So that's where the cost. But we'll look into it.
Does it make sense to have that as like a bid alternate, so you at least know what the price is, and then you can make a decision?
Yes, and I'm not sure if we put in as an alternate. think we meant to. I have to check on that.
I rarely say spend more money, but
Oh, that's, yeah.
it'd be a situation to consider.
If it's
Microphone,
possible for a contractor to underbid it and then get it adjusted, I'm sorry, is it possible for the contractor to underbid it and get it adjusted later?
No, I haven't seen that. I mean, I think the change orders we've seen are legitimate. They bid the project as is, give us decent
Well, I
numbers.
was just thinking, if a variety of people bid on the job, and the one who gets the lowest bid gets it, and then what happens if they aren't sufficient? They don't do the job that well.
Well, again, we have, and that's why we pay these consultants, the construction managers, a lot of money, because they scrutinize when contractors ask for more money, and sometimes, a lot of times they've said, no, that's not, that, you should have thought of that, but other times they say, no, this is a legitimate thing, you guys, we didn't foresee this, so we put a lot of effort into making sure that we don't, spend money unnecessarily on these projects.
Well, the reason I ask that is a citizen thinks, well, they're going to bid this job, and some low bidder gets the job, but then they can't do the work for that amount, and so they come back for more.
I mean,
It's not that accurate, maybe.
well, I've seen that more on smaller projects when you have smaller contractors. Projects this size, we're going to have very competent contractors who, and they look into it, and sometimes they see stuff, but again, we usually will work things out so that if they're due additional compensation, they get it, but if not, we don't just roll over.
All right, before I call for motion, Rick has it.
This is our first time through since Board Policy 26 was implemented, and I just reread Policy 26, which you each have at your place. And in the first line, it says PPRTA member government staffs shall notify the CAC and the board. So I put recommendation, I put an action on this, but I think now in retrospect that's an error. So I think this is information only.
Mr. Chair, Rick, don't go away. I took exception to the way it was worded as far as recommendation. I was just going to recommend that it did meet Policy 26 approval. That's all. Just not whether the information. I was just trying to make it
We can
fit.
certainly pass that on, that we reviewed this, and in our opinion, that this met the requirements of Amendment 26. We can report it that way. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Administrative actions, report of recent board actions. You have that item in your agenda. Yes, sir.
Congratulations, Beverly. Clean audit.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, good report out there. The board meeting went a little longer than normal, but it was a good meeting. No issues for us that I recall. Then again, I've been on vacation. So, item 8B, titled the November 7th ballot measure. Rick, can I start this off?
Your choice. I'm here for a 10-minute presentation whenever.
All right, so, since the newly elected county commissioners appeared at the board, Commissioner Waller has thrown out several times, and I don't know whether it's politically correct to use names, but I'm going to anyway. It has been pushing for including the El Paso County portion of I-25 from Monument to the county line, of using RTA funds to do that. It's not an A-list item. It wasn't a B-list item, so technically you cannot do that, and legally you cannot do that without a vote of the people. And so there's been, in my words, continued and considerable activity to find a way to use RTA money to fund a portion, to give to CDOT, to fund a portion of that road in order to get it moving, if you will. Particularly, we're talking about from here to Denver, and there's a bigger project that includes all the way north to Fort Collins. But anyway.
How far is that from to the county line? It's not very far.
It's
Two and a
about
half.
1.5
Two and a half miles, yeah. And so there's been a considerable amount of movement going on. So when I read in the paper the other day that now that city governments and local city governments, which are members of our board, are now meeting and discussing this in open forum without first coming to us and having a plan bothers me. Bothers me a lot, and I'll tell you why. One, it bothers me that they're using terms like excess revenue and this kind of stuff. And there's not excess, it's all revenue. And just because it hasn't been allocated and it's being sit here in a budget amendment doesn't make it excess. So the perception is that we're not spending all the money we're getting, and that we all know that's not true. So it's the messaging that really bothers me, that a new commissioner is going out, running around, trying to do this, and he's getting legal advice, and it's so far been above board. But we're the citizen people and answer to the people that we go back to, and there's just been no communication about this strategy or plan, and it's a political agenda in my opinion. And I state again, that's my opinion. And so I've got several things that concern me. One, the messaging to the public on the impact, and by the way, some of the numbers, if you read the article, ranged from $15 million for 3 or 4 years to $5 million a year for 5 years or 3 years. So we're talking, $20 to $30 million of RTA money, future revenue, going to this project, which is a lot of A-list projects, or puts us into the B-list and accomplishes a whole lot of B-list projects. Not that I'm against the project. I made it very clearly. I drive that corridor. I drove it every day for a long time when I was working for the Division of Wildlife. It sucks, and something needs to be done to it. But I'll get to my last comment. So then the question becomes, with RTA, to my knowledge, we don't have a category of regional projects that we could pool money to. It either belongs to one of the member governments or this one. It can't be the city. It's no city property, so which means it would have to fall on the county. And so would the county take it out of their share, or would we approve this extra money as over and above the county's share to be given specifically for this project? If it's a regional project, then the city ends up paying 27% or whatever their share of large capital projects are. 71%. And so that's not fair to the city either for the work that they need to get accomplished and whatnot. So none of these have been discussed, by the way, that to my knowledge. Certainly not with us, and so, but I think about the long-term impact in the Colorado Springs area of $30 million being given to CDOT. Now, some of you may remember or know that I was a member of PPACG CAC for 6 years, and we saw a precedent there where the Transportation Commission came back to the local Colorado Springs for the widening of I-25 for the local input, local match, and it went up a considerable amount of PPACG funding to go into the I-25 widening project. So there's a precedence already set. If we're willing to step up and fund $30 million worth of local tax money for local regional transportation improvement infrastructure and give it to CDOT for a thing, I'm just not sure where that precedence is going to go in terms of the impact on future RTA projects and what's going to happen. Are we going to end up trying to rebuild interstates with RTA money? And I know the state would like that, but that's not what I think the voters, and that's certainly not what I approved when I voted. And so the legislature needs to do their job, and they need to figure out how to tax the people in the state of Colorado to get this done. regardless of whether it's gas tax or whatever, but the politicians need to do their damn job, in my opinion, and not come back and tap our pot of money for this kind of stuff. But, just a second. I've made notes. I'm almost to the end. But going forward, this is, I believe August is the cutoff for the November ballot, for the ballot question?
July 28 is the deadline for any government to notify the county clerk and recorder that they intend to put something on the November ballot, July 28.
Okay, so July 28th, and then don't you have to have your ballot question and wording approved and something by August or something?
Yes. Oh.
Okay, first week. But my point here is that there is a lot of unknown questions here, and we've got a couple of weeks to get this out here on the thing, and as every one of you have expressed through these meetings, and certainly for me, I'm worried about the perception of the voter and how we're monitoring the money that they approve for the projects and the intent they used it. I'm not necessarily opposed to changing that to including I-25, but not in less than a month. I think we've got too many issues that are unresolved, that have not been discussed, and certainly not been discussed with us, so that we can answer to the people. Politicians have to answer to the people to get it. I got all that. But the purpose of this CAC is to provide oversight and guidance and whatnot, and we're not being given the opportunity to what could be the major change in the way the RTA is managed. So what happens now when somebody wants to change the allocation of funds to transit and comes back with a voter-approved ballot to now increase transit to 50% so we can increase transit routes around? So we're now changing a ballot issue. This is a big precedence, in my opinion, and the messaging has not been thought out, in my opinion. So, anyway, there you go. Who had their hand up first, Scott?
Well, I think this last project we just discussed is a prime example of where the quote-unquote excess revenue is going. It's the excess revenue, anything we're getting above budget, is going to cover the astronomical cost of inflation of these projects. So I don't, if they want to take a chunk to do this, then there's other projects that are not going to get built.
All right, so let me just, Bev, you correct me, please. But having spent 21 plus years in long-term fiscal planning and budgeting, when you're depending on revenue as your source of income, you never know what's going to happen. So you make a very conservative budget of something you can live with, given there may be some radical change, but you can live with it. So because you get more revenue than anticipated, that's not excess. It's above budget, but it's not excess. It's just additional revenue. And so that's that's the kind of thing. And so we've already got people in the papers that are reading and reacting to some of this stuff. And instead of being out forward with a thought-out, forward-thinking message that people could go forward, that we're all, us and the elected officials, are all on the same page, this is being thought out through one or two people that are throwing it out there, and people are already reacting to it. So who else here? Rick?
I think that we can use their terminology against them. We don't have excess funds until the last project in B is completed.
That's correct.
So if they want the excess funds, they have to wait until we finish the last project on B. Which won't happen.
Or included in the next ballot issue.
Valid.
Yeah. Tom?
That covered it. And the groups that I talk to about this kind of thing, they're still worried about potholes. There's no excess revenue. We've talked about how I tell them what our numbers come and how the marijuana tax and all this kind of stuff, more money. They say, well, fill the potholes. And yes, we talk about this choke, 2.5 miles of I-25, and they don't care. Fill the potholes, get the city up to snuff first, and we got a long way to go for that.
Well, I know Brian participated in the last one because he asked a question, but when you listen to some of these CDOT town hall meetings, the people are really ill-informed about, this guy's talking about getting a pothole in front of his house done. That's not CDOT, folks.
Right.
Okay? And so, and I don't know how many times I respond to questions on those neighborhood social media sites about potholes in 2C and this, that, and another. So
They didn't like my question either.
yeah, I know. Anyway, I'm just concerned, and I would like to address it to the board, whether it's in the form of a memo that we voice our concerns about not being included in this discussion and the messaging and the thinking through of this and the apparent rushing. That survey, that study that they're doing is not going to be done till the end of next year. And so why the rush to dedicate $30 million worth of our money, PPRTA money, to a project that's not defined yet? So, Joan?
Jim, I concur with you 100%. This disturbs me on many levels. That there seems to be some, for lack of a better term, political grandstanding that I'm most uncomfortable with. And the fact that this is being put out into the media without going through our process and respecting the process bothers me. I think it's rather presumptuous of someone to make those kinds of statements or to seem to imply that RTA is going to just roll over. I mean, I drive I-25. You're right. It's a pit. But this is where we have the perception problem from voters and citizens, is because we put one thing down on a ballot and we ask them to vote and to approve that. And then we try doing this end run around
Amen.
to give our money to CDOT. No.
No.
I
That's
think
why we
that
have
the-
RTA to begin with, because we weren't getting the funding we needed
Right.
to fix our.
I think that there does need to be some kind of memo to go forward. I find this, as you said, trying to reach this deadline is not realistic, given the timeline, and the fact that we're only hearing about it now, where I'm sure this must have been a thought way back when, but I'll let it go at that. And so I find the entire thing to be quite offensive.
Scott had his hand up.
Yeah, the entire bottleneck is 20 miles long, so why would we spend $30 million to push it 2 miles up the road to the county line and then still have an 18-mile-long bottleneck?
What I do know is there's also a lot of discussion going on amongst commissioners, amongst former commissioners, senators, to this, by El Paso and us, our region, putting up this was an attempt to pressure Douglas and Jefferson counties to step up and do some of the same.
Right.
Some of the same stuff. But that's what I know about that. Tony?
I really appreciated something that Joan just said about how, and what you agreed, the reason the RTA exists is because CDOT wasn't doing their job in the first place. And I also very much appreciated what Mayor Suthers said a couple months ago now when the idea was floated of a statewide tax to do this, saying, no, we just did that to ourselves because we take care of our own stuff. Now the state needs to take care of its stuff. We need to figure that out. So I understand where they're coming from on the, well, we'll take care of our part. We'll put up some money to take care of our part. Now you take care of the rest. It kind of falls under that same idea of we have been taking care of our own. We will take care of our own. I agree with you, though, that this is very rushed. It is not the way to go this month, in 4 weeks, 3 weeks now, as opposed to a longer discussion about this. I do appreciate the efforts being put forth, though, by the elected officials. I don't like this idea that, hey, they're trying to screw us all. I don't think that's it at all. I think they are very much trying to figure out a solution where we can do our part and get this and pressure the state to do its part as well.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's come around. Larry, you had your hand up, then Reb.
Okay. I think, we need to point out that the RTA was passed both the first time and the second time with a list of A projects and B projects. And if there are, say, for example, the A list is $20 million, and our budget ends up $20 million, that's the only projects we get done. But if we have $21 million, then we can move into the B projects. And nowhere, as you indicated earlier, nowhere is I-25 on either one of the first ballot measures or the second ballot measures on either the A or the B list. And, the public passed those lists with the understanding that, we would spend the money for those particular projects.
Now, let me be clear. They are proposing to go through a whole voter approval policy, a voter approval process in order to add that. So no one is proposing adding something without voter approval. So they're actually working with legal counsel to go up and do that. Thus, the purpose of this ballot issue for doing that. So let me be clear that if it's approved and added to the A list, it will be because the voters approve it.
But we need to point out that if that is added to the A list, that means something either on the A list or the B list is not going to get done.
That's the discussion that I'm concerned about, that at least I'm not aware that's taken place.
Yeah.
There's some smart people involved in this process, okay? I'm not saying that anyone.
For what he's just said, listen carefully. There will be a new ballot initiative
Well, I understand.
that says this is how it's going to be. You get to vote yes or no. It is not changing anything that is current. Pay attention to the wording of that ballot when I say this, because it can make a big difference, because you have to have, am I correct, unanimous IGA approval by all 5 member governments?
2/3 of each and every governing body.
Have to be approved. So literally how the ballot is worded is going to make a significant difference. I would like to address something real quick, and I'm going to try and cut the discussion a little short because I do know some things. Number one, the report that you read in the Gazette is not accurate. Rick, you have the recording of the work session? You haven't gotten a copy
Of what?
of the work session?
Of last Thursday?
Yeah.
Yes. I have.
Okay. If you listen carefully to that and then read the Gazette article, there are a number of inaccuracies. So do not base your judgment entirely on the Gazette article, because it's not correct. Now, with respect to the timing of this, in 2012, we passed what was called 1A. And there was a Citizens Advisory Committee. 2 of you here in this room, besides myself, were involved, okay? That ballot initiative barely met the deadlines, and it wasn't anywhere near as much time as this one, because there was a confrontation between the current law administration in this county and 2 commissioners, and we had we had 2 emergency meetings about putting it on a ballot initiative, and then we scrambled and wrote the thing. So literally it can be done, and it's not something that I personally consider underhanded. I don't. Now, you want my personal opinion? We shouldn't be paying for it. CDOT's problem.
Yeah.
Okay?
Exactly.
That's personal. Okay? I'm talking about historically what's happened. I don't want you to take, and I'm not trying to tell you to make your own opinion, or I do want you to form your own opinion, but don't use it solely on the basis of what you've read in the Gazette, number one. And if you go to the clerk and recorder's office, there is a recording of that work session, okay? And so you can judge from yourself for what you hear, quote, Jennifer was there and said something, Reb was there and said something, and I don't know whether Jennifer was there because Reb wasn't there, but whoever was there, okay? Jennifer never says anything at those, she's smart. But seriously, I wouldn't get all wrapped up. I have some concerns like Jim. You use the term excess. That's really offensive to me.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's probably done for political.
Of course it is.
Actually,
Brian, you were next.
yeah, if I don't have one. Sorry. First things first, I agree about the CDOT thing because going all the way back to 2004 when I first started getting involved with this kind of crud, CDOT has always been after money. That when we were discussing Highway 24 expansion and reconstruction 10 years, 13 years ago, whenever it was now, they were, on us to give them money back then. They're always the thing going on at Colorado and all that. The problem, the reason we came up with CDOT originally was because CDOT was not meeting the obligations. So the RTA was designed for us to be able to take care of ourselves rather than relying on the government in Denver, who was focused pretty much solely on taking care of Denver. So I do have an issue with that. As far as, and I have to put a caveat here, I've been friends with Commissioner Waller for a long time. I know that there is no slight intended in how this is being addressed. So no, and I'm just for clarification, I have not yet had a chance to discuss this issue with him, so I'm not going to speak for him in any way, shape, or form. But I do know that the concern with the messaging I feel is valid, and I find excess and additional probably just a word mistake. We also have to keep in mind too that, again, like Jim and Reb said, there are a lot of people involved in trying to come up with a solution here. What's coming down from the state, we're basically playing a game of chicken right now. The state's kind of basically telling us, unless you guys have skin in the game, we're not doing a damn thing. That's the state's position. The problem I have with that is I honestly think they owe it to this community.
Absolutely.
So this is going to be a political game of chicken, but we, as citizen representatives of the RTA, with discussions regarding RTA going on, need to be involved in that. So I think that is a valid point. So going forward, I think if we keep in mind that this commissioner, much like our president, has only been in office 6 months, so there's a learning curve with procedures. And that many of us have dealt with the commissioners over a long period of time. We know what's on their plate with regarding learning and stuff like that. I think we can probably put most of the way this has been handled to date in that, and maybe be a little bit more involved and constructive in the process if we kind of get our fingers in there a little bit more.
Clarification, I failed to mention this, but Rick provided, he did get a copy of the meeting that these guys were at, and in that dialogue, someone did challenge the use of excess, and what they did this thing on unallocated or unbudgeted. What was anyway? But I should have clarified that someone did challenge the use of excess, and they did change their wording, but it doesn't change my thought that we're not involved in this discussion. So that's John.
Yeah, I'm not saying, or I certainly don't mean to imply that Commissioner Waller is doing anything underhanded, because I don't believe that to be true. I think what he is trying to do, along with a lot of other people, is thinking outside of the box. What's a creative way to get this done? And I applaud his efforts for that, and I agree with that.
I concur.
However, as Brian has pointed out, the state is playing the chicken game. And I resent it. I'm a little bit tired of dollars that somehow just magically never seem to be able to go south of the interstate. They're all staying in Denver. Yeah, excuse me, let's have some parity. And so that is my concern. And I appreciate, Commissioner Waller trying to think of different ways to solve this problem, but it's CDOT's issue, not El Paso County's.
Well, and I go back to the PPACG experience, that the allocation, you've got the right choice of words here, but the state collects taxes to be redistributed back to the communities. We have been under allocated funds forever. And so when they did I-25 widening, the commissioners, whatever his name was at the time, and the commission came back and said, okay, you guys have got to pony up. And so I think it was to the tune of another 15 million or 5 million. I don't know. It was a big chunk of change that PPACG had to take out of other project funding for congestion mitigation or something in order to contribute to that, to get that section done when it got done. That's the part to Monument. Dr. Knoll, you had a question?
I just thought we ought to suggest to them that we make all state roads their responsibilities in the city and on the hill. It's just ridiculous to expect us to pick up our city costs that ought to be borne by the state and their legislature.
Well, they see the RTA as a source of funding. We got a lot of money. We put $700 million over 10 years into projects in the first one. And so they see this as a source of money. And that's, again, that's my personal opinion. But Rick?
My turn for 10 minutes?
Hey, Rick.
I vented.
So much for the short.
Yeah, we'll say he suggested it.
I vented.
Where do I start? The 20-mile section from the Highway 105 overpass to the south end of Castle Rock, called the I-25 Gap Project. There's also a project north of Denver, but we're called the I-25 Gap Project for the 20 miles. Has been on CDOT's radar, and there have been many public meetings on this going back at least 6 or 8 months. I've been to some of those meetings. And the CDOT's range of cost estimates for the 20 miles ranges from a low of $300 million to a high of $500 million. The 500 is if they completely tear up everything and start over with 3 lanes in each direction. The 300 is if they just slap down a third lane in each direction without recontouring everything. The section within El Paso County is 2 or 2.5 miles. I've driven it, and I pressed the odometer, and I feel it's 2.5 miles. But just for round numbers, call it 2 miles, 2 of the 20, so that's 10%. So 10% of a range of 30 million to 50, or 300 million to 500 million, this could be 30 to 50. Pick the middle number is 40. So that's the rough ballpark figure that CDOT is using for our 2 or 2.5 miles. Commissioner Mahler was, let me back up. As you're probably well aware of from your personal knowledge or from what you see in the newspaper, the legislature was batting around 3 or 4 or 5 different concepts and bills in the legislative session, and some without a tax increase, some with a tax increase, and then they settled on whatever they settled on, which was not major money for the state roads. So at that time, Commissioner Waller was thinking about activating the idea for a ballot measure next year, 2018, November of 2018. But when the legislature didn't do anything, and I can't speak for him, but at some point after the legislative session was over, he started to talk to some folks. And lo and behold, last Thursday, there was a meeting of the mayor and city council members and county commissioners, mayors of other, Manitou and others, a governmental session last Thursday. Jennifer and I missed it because it happened to fall at the same time as the I-25 GAP Coalition, the Douglas and El Paso County Coalition, working on this project, happened to meet at the exact same time as this city, county, metro mayors, et cetera, meeting that Jennifer Irvin and I missed. And at that meeting, and yes, Jennifer provided me a disc of the meeting, and I've listened to the hour or so on that one topic. It was multi-topics. But that was the first topic, and that lasted about an hour. But it appears to me that Mayor Suthers has bought into the idea of a PPRTA ballot measure for this November. It appears to me, my interpretation is that Commissioner Littleton is favorable. It's my interpretation, Jennifer can clarify if I'm incorrect, it's my interpretation that Commissioner Glenn, the president of the BOCC, is in favor of a PPRTA ballot measure for the fall. It's my interpretation that, who else? Nicole Nicoletta did not say yes or no. She just said she would take it to the Manitou City Council for a discussion. It's my impression that Commissioner Vanderwerf is in favor of a PPRTA ballot measure for November. And maybe one or two others. Jennifer can supplement my discussion if she'd like. So particularly on the county commission, it appears that they're in favor, and Mayor Suthers was in favor. Merv Bennett, chairman of the PPRTA board, I'm interpreting, is in favor. Now, what's not clear is how much money that would they want to put a dollar figure. There weren't any dollar figures on either the 2004 ballot or the 2012 ballot, but I'm not sure if the PPRTA board would or would not want to put a figure, either a figure per year or a not to exceed total figure. So I don't know, and I assume that'll be a discussion next Wednesday at the board meeting in this room. So that's undecided, is should there be a dollar figure. Another undecided topic, and which was not discussed last Thursday, was how to word the ballot measure. Does the board want to make it an A-list project? If so, as you recall from the ballot from 2012 and from 2004, you can't go to the B until you, and that's the key phrase is two words, completely fund the A. So if the money, if the voters approve some money for our 2 miles that's in El Paso County, and that money is set aside but not spent, does that qualify as completely funded? Therefore, you can go to the B, or is that vulnerable to a legal challenge? Because if we're ready to go to the B and we've just set aside X dollars for the I-25 gap in El Paso County, and we've taken no active steps to spend it, is that completely funded? What is completely funded? Have you completely funded your contribution to CDOT, but you haven't necessarily completely funded the 30 or 40 million unless they're going to plan to come up with 30 or 40 million?
If there's any gray area, you know there's some attorney.
So there are a number of topics, but conceptually, I've just listed everybody that I heard at that meeting from last Thursday that are in favor. But there weren't any hard numbers, dollar figures discussed. The other thing that I want to point out that was not necessarily discussed last Thursday at that city, county, and metro mayor's meeting is some historical facts here. The city has requested, and the PPRTA board has agreed to, we haven't written any of these checks yet, but the PPRTA is approved to make a $1 million contribution to CDOT's Fillmore overpass. $1 million. $7 million for the Cimarron I-25 interchange, so 1 plus 7, and $8.6 million for the Old Ranch Road over Powers, because Powers is a state road. So that's $16.6 million that the board's already approved. We haven't written any checks to CDOT, but as soon as I get the three-way IGA through the city council, our board's already approved that IGA, then we're going to be writing a check, not all of it right now, because some of it is phased over into 2018, 2019, but we're going to owe CDOT $16.8 million for those 3 CDOT projects. That's been requested by the city over the years. That's been approved by our board. So we have been contributing to 3 CDOT projects. That's a fact. Yes, sir.
Projects, B projects?
No, they're all A.
All A. Those 3 that we're just now going to.
Yeah, 2 were A and 1 was a maintenance. Yep.
And the contribution to that was included. I remember the discussion. The contribution to that was included in the discussion of the finances of the project. The holdup, particularly on Fillmore and Cimarron, has been the approval of the 3-way IGA between CDOT and the city and the RTA. CDOT and the city had one, but RTA wasn't included. So that's now being in the final stages of being approved, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So staff, Beverly and I, have no opinion on the wisdom of all this. We're simply assisting the board with their process as to how to do it, if they want to do it, if they want to put a ballot measure. But the state law has a timetable, and the clerk and recorder sent us the same letter that they sent in 2012 saying if this government, PPRTA, wants to put anything on the November 7 ballot, then we have to send a specific letter to the clerk and recorder by July 28 in order to legally reserve a spot. We don't have to come up with the ballot language by the July 28, but we do have to come eventually. There is a timetable. I haven't memorized it yet, but either August or September we'll have to come up with a ballot language and an IGA with the clerk and recorder agreeing to pay their fee. We don't know yet what that fee would be, or if the Board of County Commissioners can talk to the clerk and recorder to waive the fee, but our fee in 2012 was $422,000. But of course, we had 150 items, probably a 200-line ballot. This ballot would probably be 4 lines. Shall the PPRTA, without increasing taxes, add this one project defined below.
And then whether or not there should be language limiting the total amount so that that's recorded properly and nobody can come back and say, well, we really meant 50 million instead of 30 million.
So if the
And the construction starts at the south end, not the north.
Yeah, yeah, good
But, I'll be Commissioner Waller here for a second. CDOT loves and is further motivated to do a project if there's local skin in the game, his term, and if El Paso, if the PPRTA can come up with some funds. Oh, and let me take you on a tangent. At this meeting last Thursday, he also mentioned that since the county, not PPRTA, totally separate, the county has about 15.1 million of revenue above the Tabor cap that they either, according to Tabor, either have to return to the voters or can place a ballot on November 7 and ask the voters to keep the 15.1. And he says it's his intent to try to advocate to the full Board of County Commissioners that about half of the 15.1, 7.5 or 8, would go in a county ballot, separate from the RTA ballot, to go to the voters asking that the county keep the 15.1 and that 7.5 or 8 of that, about half, go to be dedicated to the I-25 gap within El Paso County. So that's a specific, so far from what he said, that would be a specific number, and I guess pretty much has to be. But that's a separate pot of money, a separate ballot measure that if the Board of County Commissioners approve placing that on the ballot, would be a separate one for the voters to consider and to dedicate some funds for the I-25 gap within El Paso County. And I lost my train of thought, so Tony, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Has there been, I know there's been a lot of talk about how much CDOT has not been giving us our fair share back over the last couple decades. Has there been like a line-by-line study done on how much that is? And would skin in the game count a threat to sue for that amount?
No, I can remember back in my ACG CAC days that there was a fairly considerable, when Craig Casper was here, there was a fairly considerable study and letter back through our transportation commissioner, who was a kumbaya kind of guy, and just don't ruffle feathers and everybody hold hands and sing songs kind of guy, but that it's fallen on deaf ears because we generate the revenue that the rest of the state receives. They don't have the retail and the tax structures in Southern Park County to generate enough to create anything, and so it's the collective of the Front Range, Denver, that area funding the other parts of the state that don't have the revenue to generate to keep their portion of the infrastructure up. I mean, that's a given. It kind of makes sense. You can make the argument all you want, but it kind of makes sense that's the function of government, in my opinion, in that sense, just to collect it and then distribute it and get things done. So, but yes, there's been some numbers done, but I don't know whether threatening or not would do any good now. Dr. Null?
I just can't resist. I've got a son-in-law has 2 kids, and when they misbehave, he always says, "Are you crazy?" That's what we ought to do here is tell them, "Are you crazy?" It's just this passing on of costs to local communities after the state was set up to do these things. It's just absurd.
I couldn't agree more. But anyway, Jennifer, you want to pitch in anything here? Because my interpretation is that it may fall towards the county because the city's not even a player.
Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. Just stating a couple facts. I-25, as Commissioner pointed out, is a safety issue. and it's also an economic issue. So I think what the commissioner threw out was some different options, and I think that that's what he's interested in exploring, and I think that that is something that, from an elected official's point of view, is really part of their responsibility. So just wanted to mention that. I think, and I was a huge supporter of this, is that I-25 in our region, per the PPACG board, is our highest priority. Whether it's in or outside of this county, it's a safety issue and it's an economic issue, among other things. So I think that it's an important project to get done. Now, the question is, how does that get funded? And at this point, what CDOT has said is that they're doing what is needed as far as NEPA study. This has been publicly out there. They're making they're doing, from a CDOT staff standpoint, what is needed to be able to make this project ready. And what they have said is, elected officials, we need the funding. So they've said that to the governor, they've said that to the legislature, and I think that that's pretty clear. So, and then thirdly, what I'd say is that I think Commissioner Waller threw out several different options, and I think that that's what he's trying to do, is to look at different options. There's different options as well. There's tolling, there's public-private partnerships, there's all of these items. So I think, again, I don't think he was trying to slight or overstep the PPRTA, and I don't think that that was the intent, but I think the intent at that meeting was to try to get some input. And I think one of the things he also said is he'd make himself available to, at whatever public hearing, to have this discussion and to give input on what he feels is several different options. So I think, I know that Rick was going to add this to the board meeting agenda, and I think that those discussions are going to happen. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not sure this has ever been done, but there could be a request to hold a ballot place and then withdraw. So that may be something that occurs. So I think that this is a good discussion to have, and I look forward to watching it. I think that there are several pros, but there are several cons. And so I think that those are the items that need to be discussed.
And I'd like to thank you, Jennifer, for making those comments and reiterate, I am not against this project. I am not against anything about it. I have absolutely no doubt that Commissioner Waller is trying to do the right thing. He is thinking outside the box. And so please don't imply anything that I said that is anything personal against him or he's trying to be underhanded or anything. Again, my primary concern as the current chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee is that we're not involved in any portion of this discussion, and particularly about the messaging and the credibility of this group and this organization that we've fought so hard over the years to try to maintain. That's my concern. It has nothing to do with the project. It has nothing to do with anybody's personal agenda. It just has to do with the fact that we're not included, and yet the people that we all talk to, now the politicians got their groups too, and sometimes they're the same. It's just that we're just kind of left out in the dark, and I'm getting here people asking me questions about what's this RTA adding a project that's not on the list. I've already been asked that question. And if you haven't, you will too, once this starts hitting the press. So that's my concern, is what's happening. Somebody communicate with us and let us be involved so that we're informed. And that's really the crux of my concern. Scott?
I think it's naive to think that you can carve 30 to 50 million out of the A list without losing other A-list projects. So if that's recognized up front, and you're saying we're swapping this project in for these other projects, and that's the will of the voters, then so be it. But I think to think you can do that and not lose other projects is very naive and not being truthful.
Tom, and then,
Okay, we come up with this $30 million. Is the state going to come up with the additional? Where is that money? And in the meantime, where does our money sit? Waiting for the state to come up with the rest of the $400 million that they need.
the state, you mean the legislatures or CDOT? Because CDOT hadn't got it. The legislatures have got to make a damn decision.
Right, so where would that come from?
Well, to be determined.
I'd like to
Just
take,
out of the sky?
I would remind you, there are a lot of options, and yes, I've got experience. There are a lot of options for the way the ballot itself is worded, and then what happens, whether, Rick tried to explain it to you, whether it's going to be $5 million one time, $5 million a year, whether it's $5 million with a limit of, for the sake of discussion, 15. There's nothing been decided. It's literally in its formative stages, as Jennifer tried to explain. He's taking a shotgun effect. I got to try and find some money to address this problem. And I'm not faulting him for it, because the project needs to be done. The point is, you're asking a lot of very specific information that there are no answers for. You're still formulating a plan. And when I say that, part of that is going to be feedback from, quote, the general public that doesn't happen to be there right now, but is going to come from feedback from them during probably some hearings. The important thing to remember is July the 28th, and I don't question that, but the purpose of it is for the clerk to reserve a space on the ballot.
Right.
The final ballot has to be in, and I think it's the first week of September, and I'm going by memory from what happened in 2012, and the purpose of that is the clerk and recorder's office has to proof it and a whole bunch of other things, and then it has to go out
Printed.
for printing, and it's out of state, or last I knew it was out in California, but regardless, it goes out and it comes back, but it's got to be mailed by a certain time for a November election. So it's a chronology thing. All of those things are being taken into consideration, quote, by a group. Waller's group is just focused on getting movement on that project.
Right.
And so you're asking questions or you're making comments about things that aren't even decided.
Just one second, Joni. And I don't know that we as an advisory committee under our charter have a role in deciding the policy that may go on. We just may get informed of this decision. But I feel like I need to at least state our desire to be involved. But anyway.
On that,
Nina, you're next.
on that tack, and kind of in response to where does the rest of the money come from, I think I would like just to be on record as saying if this does go through and they get it on the ballot and it's something that's being talked about, I certainly hope that if we're going to pony up $30-40 million here, that we don't also get taxed by the state for the other $270 million, because that's probably how it comes. So we get hit twice for our section.
Gene?
Well, if I understand things correctly, there is all of the money for the proposed 2-mile gap is going to have to come out of county funding, unless there is a structure change to the way funds are currently allocated to the RTA.
That's unclear. That's another unclear item.
Yeah.
If it's regional collaborative, and the past practice with regional collaborative, like West Colorado, is city 71, county 28, and the little 3, 1%. So that's unclear.
Whether it's a separate,
If it's 71, 28, and 1, or if it's 100% out of the county's allocation.
or it's some special category created for. I mean,
Well, if it's off the top, then that's 71, 28, and 1.
Right.
Because if you're taking it out of the pot is allocated 71, 28, and 1.
So that's the uncertainty. Gene?
So where do we go from here?
I think we ought to suggest we did what Boulder do.
Do what?
We ought to do what Boulder did. Tell them we'll establish a toll road.
Well, and that's one of the 5 options that Commissioner Waller listed.
Anybody
PPRTA,
comes down so far, they pay the toll. If we go up there, we don't. That's what Boulder does.
yeah.
You do, you stop, then you go right down. When you hit that section, you go and you pay it. Let's do that. I mean, it's absurd for them to
Might
pull
cause
this
an
on.
issue though, because it's a federal highway.
Yeah.
Commissioner Waller's 5 options that he listed last Thursday were PPRTA,
It's in.
the counties over the Tabor limit cap money, the 15 piece of the 15 million. PPACG, private-public partnership, and tolling. Those were the 5 that he's just laying out for discussion. I'll just go out on a limb and I'll pick a number that nobody has said yet. Let me just throw out a scenario and see how you feel about this. This is not from Commissioner Waller or anybody else. I'm just inventing this number on the spot. For the 8 million from the county's revenue over the Tabor cap, let's say the voters approve the 8, and that the board decides on 4 million a year for 3 years out of PPRTA for 12, plus the 8 is 20, and that becomes the skin in the game to keep the pressure to say, hey, look, CDOT, we came up with 20 for our 30 or 40. So Douglas County, how about you? CDOT, how about you? State legislature, our voters have made a good faith effort, skin in the game, and that keeps the pressure on the other parties that, especially the legislature, and say, come on, legislature, make up the difference for the whole 20 miles. I think that's might be in the ballpark of what Commissioner Waller's thinking.
And then it was just, Rick,
The way the thing is set up, as I understand it right now, is you have your choice of half of the 15 plus Tabor, approximately, okay? And you're also, quote, getting, that's one ballot initiative.
Yes.
And you're getting a second ballot initiative of 3 years at 4 million, so
No,
roughly 20.
I just made
whatever the numbers are.
I
but
just
you-
made that up, yeah.
Well, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
You're counting on 2 ballot initiatives to
Yes.
come up with
Yes.
both passing. Number
Yes.
one.
Yes.
Number 2, amounting to some significant funding, so quote, skin is in the game. Skin is a pretty subjective.
okay, so we've kind of kicked this around.
Yeah.
And we obviously don't have the answer. So my question to you as a committee, when I go before the board next week, do you want me to verbalize our discussion and our concern about not being involved, or do you want me to try to attempt to put it into a memo or something that is there? Either way, it's recorded.
Do it both ways. Put it in writing and verbalize it.
Both ways? Rick, would it be okay if I were to try to just put together a short memo and send it to you, and we just get an email from everybody, thumbs up or down? I don't want any wordsmithing. I'm not into a weeks-long coordinated process here, but did I cover the gist of the agenda, and is it an appropriate discussion from the committee?
2 timing options. If you want it in the packet, in the physical packet tomorrow, I'd need it by about 1 o'clock. If you just want to hand it to them, then that could be, till next Wednesday.
Probably second option.
Yeah, I got company tonight. I will try to get it to you in the morning. If not, I'll send you an email and let you know. And then I'll send it to everybody once it's done.
No, it can be an email that I just forward to the whole board, and they, not in the packet.
Right.
That's the third option, is I could send that out, whenever, Friday, Monday.
Okay. And so the core of those concerns is unanswered questions procedurally wise, the fact that we're not being involved, and the concern over precedence and credibility with the public. Is that generally the?
Sounds good.
Is that?
If I could,
I think Scott's point of any funds that get diverted to this are going to affect our project list to some degree, whether it's 5 million or 30. I think that's important to know.
Yeah.
And again, like Scott said, as long as the voters know that and they approve it, I don't, we don't, it's the voters' money. So I think that's that's the important thing is.
Okay. All right. Yeah, good
I
point.
would also, and if somebody disagrees, please speak up, but I would also mention the past CDOT lack of funding of projects is one of the issues of concern.
That's falling on deaf ears, and everybody knows that. And I could also put in there, get the legislators to do their damn job, but that's beside the point. So anyway, and one of those guys is sitting at the table when we're making this comment.
I think it'd be a good idea to kind of challenge them on, okay, what A projects are you willing to sacrifice?
Okay, yeah, good point. The bottom line is it's either, depending on the number, if the revenue trend stays the way it is, instead of reaching the end of A list by the end of 18, it may be 20, we don't get to B list. If you add this in, that we may not finish A list at all. I mean, that there is a cause and effect here. Yeah, that's a good point. Don't let that point fall on deaf ears. So yeah.
Which project?
Well, it may fall on deaf ears.
Yeah. At least we've stated our piece. Okay. Well, that was the last thing I have real quick on the agenda. Any topics for our staff review? Any questions on the Rick's review of projects, current projects? Any agenda topics for next meeting? Any communications that we haven't already discussed? Rick?
I forgot to put in your packet the minutes of the joint meeting. I put it in the board packet, but it says joint meetings. I didn't put it. If anybody would like a copy of that. Okay.
And by the way, it was a good meeting. I think that was short, but I think it was an opportunity for the new commissioners to see those that were here. The message was pretty much the same. Yes, sir?
Message get passed to our representatives,
Representatives, what do you mean?
to the legislature.
Oh, about
What stand they take on it.
on the I-25? Oh, yeah, it's been.
I think that's got to be.
Oh, it's.
You got to put pressure up there as well, I think.
The pressure's there. But anyway, I before we all go, I'd just like to thank all of you for your indulgence in allowing me to vent on this project. But I think we've all got enough emotional input and concern about this committee. Is why we're here. And when I see someone threatening or potentially threatening our space, I get voice. So thank you all. Gene?
For agenda for next meeting, an update, 8B.
Okay, an update on 8B. We can do that. All right. If nothing else, then let's consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you.
Now, we all agree we're blaming the chair, aren't we, on everything? He didn't hear me. It was useless.